Good morning and welcome, everyone. It's an honor to welcome you to our Compost Coalition press event. We're a diverse group of legislative partners and advocates from across New York State. My name is Dan Lilkas-Rain, and I'm the president of NYSAR3, the New York State Association for Reduction, Reuse, and Recycling, and I also serve as the Director of Recycling and Composting for the town of Bethlehem in Albany County, New York. I'm joined by my colleagues from NYSAR3 and other organizations, some of whom I will be introducing shortly as speakers, and our legislative partners. I want to give a special shout out to Assembly Member Dana Levenberg, Assembly Member Lunsford, and Senator May for your staunch support of the Composting Coalition and the effort, as well as all of your efforts throughout the year, and we're going to get a chance to hear from them shortly. Our coalition is here to advocate for some vital Environmental Protection Fund, or EPF, funding for the state budget. Specifically, we're asking for a restoration of the $5 million line item for what's called the food waste reduction line item, which encompasses both infrastructure for composting throughout the state for municipalities and nonprofits, as well as food rescue efforts to feed the hungry in New York State. Last year, we were able to get that doubled from the historic high to that $5 million. Unfortunately, the executive budget so far has that at $2.5 million, and we are calling for that restoration of those vital funds. And we're going to give you some reasons why that is so important in a few minutes. We're also calling for a dedicated line item of $3.25 million for the Center for Sustainable Materials Management, which does very crucial, important work throughout the state, and we will hear about that as well. It's my pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Assemblymember Dana Levenberg, a champion of composting and other environmental protection efforts, who will then introduce her colleagues.
Thank you so much, Dan. Thank you, Dan, and thank you to NYSAR3. I think I wanted to say NYSAR. Anyway, we're new branding. In any case, it's so great to be here with advocates and my colleagues in the legislature to really focus on something that is so important, which is taking food waste out of our waste stream. We know how all of these burn plants, the amount of waste that actually goes there could be greatly reduced if we took our food waste and our food scraps out of that waste stream, and it would be so much more efficient and reduce emissions greatly. It's something that I championed when I was formerly a town supervisor in Ossining, and I really leaned on the grants from New York State to get our program started, and we saw how it grew by leaps and bounds exponentially when we had that in place, because people are looking for ways to help individually and making those individual contributions by taking your food waste out of the waste stream and putting it back into becoming fertile soil that can then grow plants and food is just the perfect cycle. And that's what we should be working towards. So making sure that we have that little extra bit of money in the budget, that extra $2.5 million in the budget, plus allowing SUNY ESF to do the education is so important. It's not a lot for something that really has a huge impact in our state. So again, knowing how we were able to use it at the local level, and I know how many of my colleagues look for money like that to get these sorts of programs started, not only to make sure that people can have the little compost bins, but to find the bigger bins for collection, and to be able to make sure that there's education surrounding what can get composted and what cannot. This is what this money actually goes for. So I hope that we can continue to fight for this money together with my colleagues in the budget, making sure that we get that restoration and the additional $3.25 million for SUNY ESF for the education portion of this. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to my wonderful colleague in the State Senate, Senator Rachel May.
Thank you, Dana, and thanks to NYSAR and everybody who's here. So I represent Syracuse and Central New York in the New York State Senate. And my first work in government was on the board of the Onondaga County Resource Recovery Agency, which is a nationally renowned agency doing waste management and recycling and composting. And one of my great claims to fame was I chaired the recycling committee when we were able to make the investment to build a state-of-the-art food waste composting facility for Onondaga County, which now takes food waste from major institutions and grocery chains and is, I don't know the statistics, but somebody here probably does, has pulled a huge amount of waste out of the waste stream there. When I worked at Syracuse University in sustainability, I held a weekend workshop with students where we dressed up in hazmat suits and we sifted through a week's worth of waste from the dorms. And it was really shocking to all of us to see what was in there, but it was probably, it was mostly food waste by volume, but by weight, way more than that, because the food waste is heavy, it's wet, it is the kind of thing you don't want to be trucking to either a landfill or a incinerator. It's the kind of thing you want to pull out of that. It's what smells. It's what attracts vermin. It is what we need out of our waste stream altogether. So I really honor this work. I was proud to circulate a sign-on letter for the budget to increase Governor Hochul's, she proposed $2.5 million. We want $5 million for composting programs across the state. And it's really not just because of convenience or that kind of thing, but this is about reducing our climate emissions. This is about making our municipal waste management much more efficient. And it is just, it's one of those duh things. Like, if we can't take this valuable resource and turn it into what we know is a very key soil amendment, it is exactly where the circular economy should be acting. If we can't do that, then we are failing at our jobs of government. So I am thrilled to be here and hope we can get this money in the budget and beef up our composting statewide. Thank you all. Oh, and I'll pass it along to Jen, my wonderful assembly colleague, Jen Lunsford.
It's hard when you give us jobs that we have to keep in our head. So my name is Jen Lunsford. I represent the 135th District, which is just outside of Rochester, New York. It's very exciting. People are calling in right now. But more importantly to this issue is my district is home to the second largest landfill in the state, to High Acres Landfill. And in between my drive from High Acres to Albany, I get to pass Seneca Meadows, which is our largest landfill. And I can tell you, you can smell them coming and going. The people in my community have been so incredibly adversely impacted by just the odor of this malfunctioning landfill for years and years and years. My district was the very first lawsuit under our new Clean Air and Water Amendment because of the community's failure to properly address this particular landfill. So when I go home and I talk about composting, you could not have a more excited community. The Village of Fairport, which is in Parenton, has successfully launched their own community composting program in partnership with a local private company, because that's the way we've had to leverage our resources to make it work. We have had our county use part of my community for a pilot program to see if county-based composting could work. Our local colleges have gotten together and kind of held our haulers accountable and said, if you're going to haul our trash, we want you to haul our composting too. And they made it work. All of our local Wegmans, because we are the home of Wegmans, everyone be very jealous, has partnered with one of our local area farms to do anaerobic digesting of their expired food. We're making this work. We're piecing it together. But we need the state to create a framework that allows everyone to do this in a more efficient, more cost-effective way. You can see it can be done because we're doing it every day. But every community needs to have access to this. Every community needs to be able to do it. And the funding that we're asking for here is a key component of developing that framework. I'm so excited to be standing here with my partners who have been fighting this fight for decades and making sure that everyone, not just those who can smell the impact on their own, know that this is the most efficient, the most impactful, and the overall best way for us as a government to affect the waste stream and our climate policy as it pertains to solid waste. I'm so excited to be with my people who talk trash with me all the time. And I know that this is the year we're going to get this over the finish line. So thank you all so much. I can't wait to get back to work. Thanks. And who's coming to say I'm good to you? Dan now.
Thank you so much for our passionate, informed legislators. You can tell they're not just speaking to the issue, but really living it and making it happen. So thank you again for your efforts, all three of you. So I would like to, speaking of municipal composting efforts and other amazing things, I would like to introduce my NYSAR colleague, Angelina Brandt from the Ulster County Resource Recovery Agency.
Thank you, Dan. So the UCRRA is a solid waste authority and public benefit corporation that provides essential waste and recycling services to 182,000 New York residents in Ulster County. And like other solid waste planning units, we've seen transportation and disposal costs increasing as exporting solid waste to very distant landfills has become more expensive, more uncertain, and fiscally unsustainable. State grants provide a funding lifeline that ensures that communities can invest in sustainable practices while meeting the challenges of an increasingly expensive waste management system. Ulster County has been a grateful recipient of these Food Waste Reduction Environmental Protection Fund grants that made it possible for us to expand our composting operation from a small pilot project in 2012 up to the industrial scale composting operation that it is today, processing 7,500 tons of food scraps annually. Since 2012, we have composted 83 million pounds of food scraps, transforming it into a high-quality compost, thank you so much, that's sold to local farmers and to gardeners. And over that same time, if we had to transport that food waste to a landfill instead of composting it, it would have required 100,000 gallons of diesel to long haul it, 35 tons at a time, about 600,000 road miles. That's the equivalent of driving around the surface of the Earth 23 times, not to mention the substantial avoided methane emissions if that material had been landfilled. So these climate impacts are real and they're measurable. Building local and resilient and sustainable pathways for organics management is essential to meeting New York State's climate goals. And our composting success story in Ulster County would not have been possible without the state's EPF grants. As a direct beneficiary of this funding, I join my NYSAR colleagues and our coalition partners in recognizing that much more funding is needed to grow these projects like ours statewide. We advocate that the state budget maintains its same financial commitment to the EPF for the food waste reduction section of DEC's capital projects, sustaining the $5 million allocation that was successfully passed last budget cycle. The executive budget has it slated to be reduced to $2.5 million. And at a time when federal spending cuts are slashing into so many public programs, caring for our planet through food sustainability just simply cannot be on the chopping block. UCRRA also recognizes that infrastructure and resources needed to advance other sustainability strategies like reuse and repair, keep materials out of the landfill, build a much more circular economy, and cultivate economic development, all while fostering positive behavior change in our residents. And in recent years, Ulster County conducted a feasibility study to establish a reuse innovation center with enhanced outreach and education and a program that would collect and resell home goods and construction materials. So this study laid the groundwork for our Repower project, actively being developed at the UCRRA, a hub and spoke network of collection sites and partnerships and a business incubator space for reuse and repair enterprises. Our biggest challenge, we likely won't be able to invest in a county-wide reuse project at this scale without significant funding to offset those costs. So we joined NYSAR in calling for the $2 million dedicated budget line to reuse grants as part of the EPF funding for DEC capital projects. And last year, the need to develop reuse-focused grants was identified, it was talked about, but without that dedicated budget line, the New York State DEC would have to take funds from other very important recycling-focused grant projects. And lastly, NYSAR and this broader coalition is very supportive of the $3.25 million budget line for the Center for Sustainable Materials Management, which provides funding, research, technical assistance, all around municipal waste reduction. And UCRRA has deeply benefited from their recent recycling needs assessment work that identified county-specific metrics on recycling service access and demographics, recycling program costs, and so much more. And this information is essential for decision makers and planners to close those gaps on our state's recycling systems. So funding these areas ensures that the necessary infrastructure exists so New York State communities can face our rising costs and our difficult challenges with full commitments to recycling, composting, reuse, and sustainable materials management. This is an essential public service, and it is well deserving of the state's investments in these grant programs. And New York State has shown such clear leadership to back these commitments. So let's invest in a greener, cleaner New York State for all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Angelina. It's obvious that Ulster County is doing very important work under your shared leadership. I would at this time like to introduce my colleague from NYSAR, who's also the Executive Director of the Center for Sustainable Materials Management, Catherine Walker.
Thank you. You did my job for me, Angelina. I love it. Thank you, everybody. I had to make notes because you all know I'll go on and on and on forever if I don't. So I'm going to reach out, or I'm going to look at those. But first of all, on behalf of myself and Mark Lichtenstein, who's the founder and the PI on the Center for Sustainable Materials Management in Syracuse, New York at SUNY ESF, thank you to NYSAR for putting this together. Thank you to our incredible electeds here that are supporting us and know this work. And thank you, obviously, to Angelina and her hard work at the municipal level that makes our job so easy, because she's really the shining light for the whole state. We use you all the time up in Monroe County. I just made that comment to Jen, like you gotta look at that model. So as the sole academic on the panel right here, not to say that you aren't all academics, but I just want to zoom out, and I was so happy to hear Angelina talk about climate. We all know in this room, probably from the Sustainable Materials Management, the full life cycle of materials. So extraction, production, transportation, and disposal. Materials management is connected to about 42% of greenhouse gas emissions. We all have that pretty much tattooed somewhere on our body. We know that. It's not just reducing waste or sanitation. It's a climate strategy and environmental justice strategy, and also an economic strategy. And that was really where the Center for Sustainable Materials came in. I love to hear some systems talk. We need a system, and since 2019, we have been reimagining what materials management could look like to deliver measurable waste reduction and cost savings statewide. This is through data-driven research, like Angelina said, technical assistance and local programs. Initiatives like Certify Circularity, which is one of our favorite programs, is directly supporting businesses and institutions across New York State, really doing the hand-holding to reduce waste and disposal costs, strengthen local recycling and reuse markets. The center, in addition, or in partnership with the Syracuse University's Center for Sustainable Engagement, it's all a mouthful. I know we get so confused with these, but ISC has advanced environmental justice efforts and incredible targeted education and engagement. Programs like Recycle Right New York, if you haven't looked on that site, Google it, look at it. It's a resource for all of us. Recycle Right New York, and I think Jen Lunsford, you're in one of our materials there. I hope you have it. Ensure that overburdened communities aren't just told what to recycle, but they're equipped with clear, community relevant and responsive tools which reduce contamination, lower municipal costs, so that we can more fully participate in the circular economy. We also leverage incredible state investment to unlock additional funding. It is key. We take these dollars and we stretch them as far as they can go through efforts like Orange County's Green Grub program, which was partly funded by the State Department of Health grant. We coordinated partnerships and secured resources that stimulate small businesses and offer direct funding for reuse and recycling systems. And last but not least, we have provided trusted, nonpartisan expertise, as you'll hear a lot today, and as we'll be talking about, our statewide New York State recycling system needs assessment provides accurate statewide recycling data that was previously unattainable. So think about this. When you try and go to share with an elected, well, how much is that going to cost? How much material is in the waste stream? We didn't know any of these. We didn't know how to provide that information, and now we can reference that. And as Angelina said, it goes county by county, and you can really dive in deep if you want to be a recycling nerd like us. So we're really serious about reducing emissions, as you can tell, strengthening local economies, and protecting communities, especially in what we're facing, which is complete federal uncertainty. We must invest in the full materials management, which requires a full system. Because when we invest in waste reduction, we're not just managing trash. We can use the word trash, but we're not just managing trash. We're managing climate risk, we're managing public health, and we're managing New York State economic future. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. And at NYSAR, we appreciate just how valuable a partner the Center for Sustainable Materials Management has been, and hopefully will continue to be with this dedicated funding. I wanted to bring things full circle for just a minute. I've been my other hat, in addition to, it looks very similar to the one I'm wearing, in addition to being the president of NYSAR3, is the director of recycling and composting for the town of Bethlehem and Albany County, New York. As I mentioned, I'm in my 16th year in that position, so I know from experience running our compost facility and our recycling and composting programs just how valuable this municipal funding for the food waste reduction line item is. And I wanted to give a couple examples here. Something that everyone may not be familiar with is that the state's food scraps donation and food donation and food scraps recycling law is expanded as of January of next year. The large producer threshold, which is what constitutes those that are required to donate excess food and or recycle any leftover food that's inedible, is being expanded from 2 tons per week on average of food waste generated to 1 ton per week. The DEC estimates that will add 2,000 more large producers to the entities that will be required to donate excess food, and also as far as the required to recycle piece of it, which is a slightly smaller subset of those large producers, they are also doubling the threshold with the new law on January 2027 from 25 miles located within a facility that has the capacity to accept that food waste for recycling to 50 miles. So we don't have exact figures of how many more entities of those 2,000 that are going to be triggered by the first part of the threshold, but needless to say, it's a significant amount. One example, and Senator May spoke eloquently about her involvement with Onondaga County's Resource Recovery Agency and the compost facility that sounds like she helped get started many years ago. Just like Ulster County's Resource Recovery Agency's amazing compost facility, Onondaga County also boasts one of the largest and longest running compost operations in the state, which has been a great example to municipalities statewide. But just a little bit of a reality check here for what capacity do we really need in order to handle the food scraps. We would need at least 4 times the current, this is some rough estimates from our NYSAR's Organics Council chair, and our Organics Council in general. We would need at least 4 times the existing compost facility capacity, which is already impressive compared to a lot of other communities in the state, for just the city of Syracuse's, if we able to handle all of their food scraps, or 16 times the existing capacity for all of Onondaga County's food waste, not to mention the rest of the state. So just a little bit more figures to stress the importance of the fairly modest amounts of money compared to the overall state budget that we're asking for today. If anybody else, anything else to add, we can take questions if there are any from members of the press or the audience. Well, seeing none, thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.